Hello, y'all. Clifford Campbell here, and today we're doing ratios. Ratios. I think ratios are probably one of the most important parts of the TSI exam. Typically, when I teach my students how to do ratios and I can see like a student is getting good at it, their scores really jump on the TSI exam, okay? So let's hit these ratios hard, okay? 1.3 ratios. Okay. Let's just start out with the basics. So how do you solve a ratio? So I'll show you how to set them up second, but let's just set one up and solve it. Let's say you got 3 over 4 equals, I don't know, like 5 over x. And it says solve for x. Students are always looking at these and going, oh, you cross multiply, but then they always do cross multiply wrong for me. So let's show you how to do cross multiply right, okay? So it's going to be that times that, and you can do whichever one first. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do the 4 and the 5. So 4 times 5, that's going to be 20, equals, okay, equals, that's what you're supposed to do. And then 3 times x, 3x. Okay, and then if you got to solve for x, you got to get rid of this 3, right? So what I need to do is I need to divide by 3, so they cancel. Divide by 3, and that's my answer. X equals 20 over 3. That is my answer for x. Okay? Let's do another one. Let's put the x somewhere else. Let's put the x like on the bottom here. So let's go like 2 over x equals 7 over 5. Okay? Now cross multiply. Okay, I did it before I went from 4 to 5. Let's do it different. Let's do it like that. So 2 times 5 is 10 equals 7 times x. And then you got to solve for x, right? So I got to get rid of this 7. So I'm going to divide by 7. And that's going to be my answer because the 7's canceled. So x equals 10 over 7. Now let's say you did it the other way. I just want you to see that they're all the same. So we did 2 times 5 first. Let's say you did x times 7. So we do 7x equals 2 times 5 is 10. And we still end up having to divide by 7, right? And you end up with the exact same answer, 10 over 7. Okay? That's how you do these problems. Okay, that's how you do the cross multiply. So right there, you should be able to start up on these right here, the first 3. You should be able to do those. Okay, now let's talk about how to do some of the word problems. Okay, now the reason why I think students typically jump up on their scores when they do ratios is because there's like a million different ways to ask a ratio question, okay? There's a bunch of them. And so you just need to be able to identify them. And I think that once students are able to identify them, they start getting these correct. And I think there's a lot of them on the exam. So let's start off with something like, you know what? I should probably start out with how I started number 1 on here, okay? So like let's say we got a ratio of, I'm going to do the same as I got on that I wrote up there. I say we have a ratio of teachers to students. And let's say, a typical classroom has like let's say there's 2 teachers though, so we have a different number here. And let's say for every 2 teachers, there's like 40 students. Yeah? So this is about 20 students per teacher. Okay, so we have a ratio of teachers to students at 2 to 40. If there are 105 teachers, how many students are there? Okay, so now the whole thing on ratios is you're going to set everything up to look, kind of like these. And then just if you set it up correctly, solving for x is the easy part. You just need to set it up correctly. So whenever you're setting up a ratio, notice it's a fraction. It's a fraction equals a fraction, right? We need to make sure we set up our fractions right, okay? So here's how I typically do it. I'm doing teachers to students, right? So I put like a T for teachers and S for students. So I'm going to do a fraction equals a fraction. Now on the top is going to represent all teachers. On the bottom is going to represent students, okay? You're going to do this for all types of ratios. So teachers to students is 2 to 4. So there's 2 teachers to every 40 students, right? If there are 105 teachers, How many students are there? Okay, where does the 105 go on this fraction? Well, it goes with the teachers because it said there was 105 teachers. And there's X number of students that what we're solving for, right? And we're just going to have to, on this part, they would probably give you a calculator, okay? So you're just going to have the calculator that you can click on the top right-hand corner, and then, you do your math here. So we're going to do 40 times 105. That is 4,200 equals 2 times x. And then we just solve for x. We have to get rid of the 2, so we divide by 2. And we get our answer of 2,100, right? And that's how many students there are. Okay? Now, let's do one more like that. Let's say, I'm going to go to the hard one, okay? So I feel like you guys, usually my students kind of understand when I explain one of those. So let's go to the next thing. Let's go to the hard one, okay? So they're going to say something like the teachers to student ratio, okay? And you know what? Let's switch it up so it's not teachers and students. Let's do something like, I like this one. There's like you're at Walmart or something. And so there are, obviously at Walmart, there are a bunch of apples and bananas. Okay? There's a ratio of, 5 to 4. Okay? That's how you do the ratio, that semicolon. Okay? So the first number should represent the first thing that was said. The second number represents the second thing that was said. So we got 5 apples to every 4 bananas, okay? If there are, check this out, 120 apples and bananas, so that's the total, right? In total, how many bananas are there? Okay, so what you're going to do is, remember we were setting them up. I told you to set up what you have on the top and the bottom, right? It isn't moving. There we go. So like on this one, we did teachers to students, and we did teachers and students. On this one, what I would assume everyone would have probably done is put apples and bananas, right? And then they would have set up their fraction. And they would have been like, okay, well, there's 5 apples to every 4 bananas. And they would have been like, okay, and then there are 120 apples and bananas in total. And you'd be like, well, I can't put 120 on the top or the bottom because this is just for apples, this is just bananas, but this is everything in total, right? So you're like, how in the world am I going to do that? So what you're going to do is you're going to abandon this one, this whole idea here. Yeah, I'm not going to abandon the idea, but we're going to switch it up here. We want to know how many bananas there are, right? So let's write how many we have. Let's, instead of doing apples over bananas, we're going to do bananas and the total. Yeah, so it's going to be bananas over the total. We're going to set this up here, okay? Okay, so bananas, we have 4 bananas. Yeah, for the total, whatever the total is, well, the total is going to be total of 9, because it's 5 plus 4. There's 9 in total for everything. Yeah? Okay. Now, there are 120 apples and bananas in total. So now we do have a place to put this 120 because it goes on the total part. Yeah? And then we put an X for the number of bananas. Okay? And then you can just solve this. So 4 times 120 is going to be 480 equals 9x. And then you just divide by 9, right? And then if you have a calculator on the TSI, like in the top right-hand corner, then you would get 53.33. And you can't have like a decimal number of bananas, so you just say it's 53. Okay? Be like, oh, there's 53 of them. If you don't have a calculator, then you would have just left your answer with the fraction. The fraction would have been one of the answers because, wait, 8. Oh, that looks like it can simplify. Each one of is divisible by 3. So you could have simplified that. So 480 divided by 3 is going to be 160. So this can be simplified as 160 over 9 divided by 3 is 3. And that would have been your answer, yeah, on the multiple choice section. Okay, so now you've seen this ratio portion. Now, the way that you can also ask these questions are you can set up like geometric figures. So like let's say you have a triangle and these triangles are similar, okay? They got to say they're like similar or proportional some way. And then you say that, one side is a 5 by, 6. And then they say, what is this side if this side is, 10 or something? And then you just set it up. You set up your stuff. So you could always say like this is the length, this is the width. And then you can do it the same way that I was doing it before. So your length is 5. Your width is 6. So the length here is x. The width here is 10. And then you just cross multiply. So 5 times 10 is 50 equals 6 times x is 6x. Divide by 6. And that cancels here. So your answer is going to be 50 over 6. And this is divisible by 2, right? So we can divide each by 2. So 25 over 6 divided by 2 is 3. And there's my answer. Okay, or if you have a calculator in your top right-hand corner, then it would be in a decimal form. And then, you would answer it in decimal form. Okay. You can do that same thing with, like if it would have been a rectangle, okay? That doesn't change anything. Any sort of geometric shape where they say they're proportional, you can do this on, okay? The ones that the AP calculus exam love to ask about was shadows. So let's start with like a shadow. So like, let's say you have, some sort of object. I don't know, maybe like a stop sign. Oh, that's a beautiful stop sign. And it's, how tall is a stop sign? Like 8 feet or so. And it gives off a shadow of 3 feet. And then it says, oh, there's a tree, next to the stop sign. And it gives off a shadow. And it says the shadow of the tree is, 5 feet. And it says, how tall is the tree? And you can just set that up. So, you can say maybe you can still set it up as like length and width, or you can do like tallness and shadow. This would be your tallness and shadow. So you have like T into S. And you set it up just like I showed you on the other ones. So the tallness of this one is 8 and the shadow is 3. The tallness of this one is X. The shadow is 5. Then you just go about solving it. 8 times 5 is 40 equals 3 times X is 3X. And then you just divide by 3 to cancel here. And you get X equals 40 over 3. Okay. And then you're going to get the idea just going through the worksheet. You're going to see all the different ways to set up proportions. The whole worksheet is proportions, ratios. Okay, so just go through there. You'll see what types of ways they're setting them up. And I think you'll learn a lot, okay? I think this one will help you out really well on the TSI. Have a great day.